Now, today I want to talk to you about the German conductor Michael Gielen, who died relatively recently. He was a marvellous artist, a composer himself, quite an austere character, although he also had a sense of humour. And he left a lot of recordings, live performances that have been issued on the SWR label, including the complete Mahler symphonies, Bruckner symphonies, symphonies by Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, a lot of contemporary music, a lot of Schoenberg, Berg and Webern, always played with utter conviction and intensity and such great clarity. That was the thing about Gielen's conducting. You could hear through the music. You could hear everything that was going on beneath the top line. And he kept your attention, held your attention for the duration of the piece, no matter how long that piece was. A piece, for example, like Mahler's Eighth Symphony or the Sixth Symphony, which he recorded 3 times. The latest one, very, very slow, has come out in a separate album on SWR Classics. The first movement, the slowest I think I've ever heard. A friend of mine called it valedictory. Well, it's supposed to be energetic. I'm not quite sure it's right, but it certainly makes an impression. Now, when Gielen and his orchestra came over here a few years ago, I had the good fortune to be sent out to Baden-Baden to interview him, and I'll never forget the experience. It was very amusing in some respects, although he was also extremely interesting. I spent a day, 17 hours it must have been, travelling there and back. I took a flight, I think it was to Hamburg, no, it's to Freiburg, took a train to Baden-Baden, and when I got to Baden-Baden station, which is relatively small, with a small track, I looked over the road and there was Gielen standing bolt upright next to his Merc, an old Merc as it happens. I went over, crossed the bridge, went over and met him, shook hands. He was very formal and drove me way up into the hills, Riesling country. It was a beautiful day, and we sat down. I had my tape recorder. We did the interview. I asked him a lot of questions, and he answered them very interestingly about Bernstein and Mahler, about modern music, about the classics, about his interpretations, aspects of his career, all that sort of thing. It came out in an article in The Independent, which you can access online. Then, to my surprise, he picked up his briefcase, he opened it, and he took out a bunch of records, or CDs I should say, which in those days were on the Interchord label, grey, rather uninviting designs, but some marvellous stuff. Ripening by Josef Suk, I think Mahler's Seventh Symphony, one of my own favourites, was one of them. So I was absolutely thrilled. So I said to him, Mr. Gielen, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for passing these CDs to me. And he looked at me rather sternly, he said, "You will give them to me back." And I laughed. I thought, give them to you back? I've spent goodness knows how many hours coming up here to interview you, and there are 3 or 4 CDs here. And then he repeated what he said, even more quietly, "You will give them to me back." Well, needless to say, the Postal Service being what it is, he didn't get them back. And I did use them later on, and they got reissued on various labels. I think SWR reissued those particular recordings. And when we got back to the station, it was marvellous. He drove me back and he escorted me back to the right platform. There was a bridge going over the rail track, and I went to go over the bridge. He said, no. He says, we don't go over the bridge. We cross the track. He said, nothing's coming. He said, sometimes it does not to obey orders. Then I thought, my God, that sounds like something out of a B movie about the war. But basically, he was a lovely man, very, very interesting. One of the most underappreciated conductors of recent years. And it's great that SWR brought out, I think, 8 volumes so far of his recordings, which I've had the good fortune to write about, and even more the good fortune to listen to them and appreciate them. I'd recommend them. And Gielen in general, if you see his name crop up on programmes or on CDs, invest in the listening experience, because you won't have wasted your time. Thank you for watching.